love the NES. There's so many awesome 8-bit games that came out on that console and are still worth playing. And that list expands even further when you consider the library of its Japanese equivalent, the Family Computer, aka the Famicom. For many Switch owners though, they think the NES and Japanese Famicom games can only be found via Nintendo Switch Online service. But trust me, there's plenty of NES games you can play on the Switch beyond that NES app. Through various collections, or through enhanced singular releases, there's a way to build a sizable, legal library of awesome 8-bit classics on the system without paying for a subscription. So make sure to grab your controller of your choice, and let's check out some 8-bit goodness on the Nintendo Switch. The Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, the Cowabunga collection, pretty much covers most of the 8-bit and 16-bit TMNT games from Konami. Of course, it means it has the NES games, and the NES has some pretty good ones, featuring the Green Team. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 2, the arcade game, is one of my favorite beat-em-ups for the 8-bit system, and it's a nice 8-bit conversion of the legendary arcade game, with 2-player support, and it even has its own original levels. I spent many hours as a kid trying to defeat Shredder in this one, while putting the boots to the Foot Clan. The superior NES sequel, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 3, The Manhattan Project, is also in this collection. This one takes what the prior NES game had and builds off of that by improving in every single category. Better gameplay mechanics, special moves have been added for each of the turtles, it has fantastic boss fights with legendary TMNT foes, and it has some of the very best stages to play through in any 8-bit beat-em-up game. Also, the music for this is fantastic and has one hell of a soundtrack. So in the NES's very best games, and personally for me, it is the best beat-em-up game for the system. It's a game you must simply check out if you haven't yet. Also included in this collection for the Switch is the first NES TMNT game, a 2D side-scrolling action platformer, which some might not like or even hate, but as I've grown older and more aware of what to do and what not to do in the game, I've grown to appreciate this one quite a bit. I actually like this one a lot now. It's a toughie, but I encourage you to check out some tips videos if you're struggling with it. That's what I did to become better at the game myself. Finally, the 8-bit version of Tournament Fighters is included here too, and while it's nowhere near as good as the included 16-bit versions, it's an impressive little game for the 8-bit system. It's neat how much you can do with just 2 attack buttons and a D-pad, and it's at least worth fiddling with to see how developers could possibly fit a fighting game on the NES. The collection itself is very good. There's online multiplayer for the NES game, The Manhattan Project, and for some other games included in the collection, and it even has the ability to play the Japanese versions, most of the games included. There's a lot of Mega Man collections out there for the Switch, and the very first Mega Man Legacy collection is one of the very best. This contains the first 6 Mega Man games, all of which came out for the NES. As hard and difficult as these games might be, these are some of the NES's very best games, with some spot-on gameplay, lots of challenging stages, and thrilling boss fights. The Legacy Collection makes it easier than ever to enjoy these games, as they have a rewind feature, a save function, and a turbo CPU speed function that reduces slowdown in the games. They also included a ton of extra content, like challenges to play through, with remixed stages, unlocks through amiibo support, and a pretty good museum mode to check out. It even has the Japanese versions of each game included. If you like the NES era of gaming, then the collection is something that I consider to be a must-own for the Switch. With the price tag of $14.99, it's totally worth it, but it does go on sale on the eShop quite often, so make sure to look out for that. The Castlevania Anniversary Collection is a must for any fan of the series, and included in the collection are 4 NES games. You get the classic Castlevania game, that is still tough, yes, but still a fair game, and one that's wonderful to master. You also get Castlevania 2, which yeah, it has a reputation, thank you angry video game nerd, but it's nowhere near a bad game. If you follow a guide, which I do recommend, it can be an enjoyable game, and it has some awesome music in it. Castlevania 3 is one of the NES's very best games, and expands on the gameplay from the previous game with a bigger adventure, branching paths to take, and the ability for characters to join and assist the player during their adventure. There's lots of replayability with this one, so even if you beat this game once, you'll want to go through it again to see all the stuff within. All 3 games are worthy pickups, and to top it off, the collection on Switch also includes the Famicom versions, in addition to the NES originals. There are some differences between the North American and Japanese versions, like for example, Castlevania 1 on the Famicom has a easy mode. Let me tell you, my mind was blown when checking that out and finding out there's no knockback in that mode. So it's cool that they included it as a way for gamers to check out both versions. Finally, there's Kid Dracula, a Famicom exclusive spin-off of the Castlevania series that has an official English localization for the very first time via this collection. This game has you playing as Kid Dracula, who after waking up from his sleep has been challenged by Galamoth and now needs to defeat him. Even though it's an action platformer like the other Castlevania games, this one is more of a run-and-gun game, almost in a Mega Man-esque kind of way. It's pretty cool though, and totally worth checking out. The Contra collection is another excellent collection from Konami, and this one has a lot of classic Contra games, from the arcade to 16-bit systems, from the Game Boy, and of course the NES and Famicom. There's lots of good games in this collection, but for the purposes of today's video, it is good to know that they have both the NES and Famicom versions of Contra, as well as the NES and Famicom versions of Super C, the 8-bit console version of Super Contra. These were fantastic run-and-gun games, nice conversions of the arcade games, that were hard as hell for sure, but they're so much fun, and they're even better in 2-player co-op. These versions via the Anniversary Collection, just like the Castlevania Collection, still have access to the related cheat codes, like that classic Konami code. Just remember that when entering the code, what would be B and A actually corresponds to the fire and jump buttons on a modern controller. Both Konami collections are pretty good at their MSRP price, but they've been going on sale quite a lot lately on the eShop, going for less than $5 each, so make sure to keep a lookout for them when they do go on sale. Both Namco Museum Archives volumes contain a bunch of NES and Famicom conversions of their famous arcade games, in addition to 2 brand new NES games that have never been released before. Volume 1 has Galaxian, Pac-Man, Xevious, Mappy, Dig Dug, The Tower of Duraga, Sky Kid, Dragon Buster, Dragon Spirit, and Splatterhouse Renpaku Graffiti. Splatterhouse Renpaku Graffiti is especially noteworthy here, as it's never been released here in North America before. Volume 2 has Galaga, Battle City, Pac-Land, Dig Dug 2, Super Xevious, Mappy Land, Legacy of the Wizard, Rolling Thunder, Dragon Buster 2, and Mendel Palace. As a bonus, Volume 1 has an 8-bit version of Pac-Man Championship Edition that was made to work on actual NES hardware, and it's absolutely amazing. It's incredible how they got this to work. The second collection has a brand new game, an 8-bit version of Gal Plus, the sequel to Galaga. Instead of combining ships, like the previous game, you're able to capture enemy creatures and have them join your team. It's a pretty cool mechanic. On the eShop, both volumes go on sale pretty often for $5, so when they do go on sale, make sure to pick them up. They're an incredible value. While I'm here, I do want to point out there is a Japanese version of these collections under the name of the Namcot collection that includes a number of different games, but do keep in mind there is no English option for many of the Japanese exclusives in this collection. There is a free app to download from the Japanese eShop, and you can buy additional games for it. It has a lot of neat features, like the collector's shelf to decorate, various artwork and manual scans, and more. That said, if you want everything it includes, there is a physical version of it for those who want to import it, and it's relatively cheap to get for an import, all things considered. Within the last year or so, a bunch of Ninja JaJaMaru games have been re-released for Switch, just in time for the brand new game in the series, Ninja JaJaMaru, The Great Yokai Battle Plus Hell, to arrive. The Ninja JaJaMaru Retro Collection contains the NES and Famicom games, Ninja JaJaMaru-kun, an arcade-style game, which was one of the Famicom's most popular games in the early days. The platform is Ninja JaJaMaru Big Adventure, and Ninja JaJaMaru Operation Milky Way. Operation Milky Way is pretty notable here too. This is very much in the style of later platformers for the NES, like Super Mario Bros. 3. For games that prior to the collection I barely even knew existed, they actually turned out to be very fun to play. The Retro Collection also includes the Game Boy game Ninja JaJaMaru The Great World Adventure, with a brand new DX version included, as well as the super awesome Super Ninja Kid, which is a really good hidden gem of an action platformer for the Super Nintendo. The collection goes for $14.99 on its own, but it's been on sale in the eShop recently for as low as $3. While I'm here, I might as well mention that there is a collection containing 2 Famicom RPG games in the Ninja JaJaMaru series that were officially translated. The Ninja JaJaMaru The Lost RPGs collection contains 2 games, Ninja JaJaMaru The Ninja Skill Book and Ninja JaJaMaru The Legend of Golden Castle. The first one is more of a JRPG that's kinda akin to the early Dragon Quest games, and the second one is more of an action RPG with gameplay in the style of the top-down Zelda games. I wasn't a big fan of these 2 games, but that's just me. You might be different or more patient than I am, so feel free to check these out if you're interested. The next 2 games are re-releases of Sunsoft games that didn't come out on the NES in North America back in the day. Gimmick, also known as Mr. Gimmick, is a wonderful 8-bit platformer and is one of the more rare as well as expensive Famicom and NES games ever made. Featuring fantastic colorful graphics, one of the best soundtracks to any 8-bit game, and some very unique gameplay, it's a gem for sure. Speaking of unique gameplay, this one plays very different from other platformers on the NES. See that little guy? He's called Yumataro. He's a little yokai, and all he can do is jump and summon a star. That star, though, can be bounced off the floor and walls and other objects, and can not only be used for attacking enemies, but also for jumping on in order to reach other platforms. It's a challenging mechanic to master, but you must get the hang of it in order to reach the game's true ending, as you often need to use that star to reach certain areas. It's one of the toughest NES games I've ever played, but it's also one of the most rewarding ones to complete, and the special edition on Switch definitely makes it easier for newcomers to enjoy the game, as well as for masters to show off their skills. Those save states and rewind features, perfect for those who want to master parts of the game, or take a little bit of the edge off the difficulty, as well as a high score and speedrun modes and the online leaderboards to show off those who can truly complete the game without any, no pun intended, gimmicks attached. HEBEREKE is the other Sunsoft game that I'll talk about today. It's an early Metroidvania game that has you playing as a penguin-like creature who seeks out his companions in order to stop an alien from invading. Each of these companions have different abilities that you can switch to in order to advance further in the game. It's a cute game, it's pretty easygoing, but it's still fun, and it's earned itself a pretty sizable cult following over the years. In the HEBEREKE Enjoy Edition for Switch, the NES version included here is the original Japanese version. That means the text here is in Japanese. The game is easy enough to figure out, and you don't really need the translation, though I still wish it had it. The version on Switch also includes achievements, rewind feature, and save states, as well as scans of the artwork, box scans and manuals and such, and it even includes a speedrun mode for those who are into that. I recommend to check this one out if you want to check out one of the NES's more eclectic games. Speaking of eclectic games, Abarenbo, Tengu, and Zombie Nation are right up there. Both games are relatively the same, except for one is the Famicom version and the other is the NES release. But in each game, you control a giant head and shoot 'em up levels. Yes, you heard correctly, a giant head is what you control, that being a giant Tengu head in the Japanese version and a giant zombie head in the English version. In the Zombie Nation version, the giant head's goal is to destroy something called the Dark Seed. This is an alien that apparently crashed into Earth and turned people into zombies. Yeah, the games are nuts, but it's a fun one to check out for sure. Each game has multiple difficulty settings, and you're able to select any stage at will, kinda like the Mega Man games. The release here on Switch contains both games, as well as different modes to play through, and has rewind and quick save support, as well as achievements and such. The SNK 40th Anniversary Collection is a collection that I've talked about before, simply because of all the sweet arcade games included. There's a bunch of them here, and it's a pretty interesting look, as well as a good way to experience games prior to SNK's famous Neo Geo era. Beyond those arcade games, though, is the included NES games, which for those unaware, SNK published a lot of games for the NES back in the day, and you can experience a good selection of them via this collection. Included are NES games Alpha Mission, Athena, Ikari Warriors, Victory Road, aka Ikari Warriors 2, Guerrilla War, Iron Tank, POW, Prisoners of War, Ikari 3 The Rescue, plus the action RPG Crystallis. It's really good stuff. Majority of the games are very arcade-like, so they're very easy to jump into and play, and Crystallis, the lone RPG here, is utterly fantastic. I know for RPGs on the NES, it's always Final Fantasy or the Dragon Quest games that get the love in the system, but honestly, Crystallis is right up there. It's got good visuals, tight controls, great gameplay, and a nice soundtrack. It checks all the boxes, and it's a must-play in my eyes for sure. Now this collection is a bit higher in price compared to the other ones I've talked about today, but for what is included, all the arcade games, the NES games, and the ability to watch replays and jump in at any time, which is a really neat touch, plus a big museum mode included. It's honestly one of the best collections on the Switch, bar none. The Double Dragon and Kunio-Kun Retro Brawler Bundle is another excellent collection on Switch to own. Featuring 18 NES and Famicom games, it's one of the biggest collections here in this video. You get access to all 3 Double Dragon games, Renegade, Super Dodgeball, Crash and the Boys Street Challenge, and one of NES's best beat-em-up games, River City Ransom. But you also get a ton of other games never released in English before. For these Japanese Famicom games, all the text has been officially translated for the very first time ever, and in some games, you get the option for selecting a quality up version. What does this option do? Well, it improves the performance of the games, as well as some of the in-game commands, making them better than before. Of course, you still get access to the original versions, if you prefer. For the cherry on top, this collection has online support for up to 4 players for the games included. This is one hell of a collection, featuring beat-em-ups, fun takes on sports and competition, as well as some hilarious spin-offs, and they could very easily just loaded the games up in this collection and called it there, but they went the extra mile to treat these games well. Make sure to get this one for the Switch if you're a fan of the NES and Famicom era. There's plenty to love here. And there you go, lots of NES and Famicom games that you can get and enjoy without having to pay for Nintendo Switch Online. A lot of the games here are available through collections, as you can very much tell, and in a lot of cases, they also include retro games from the arcades, Super Nintendo, Game Boy, and such, which can make them a very good value to get. Let me know down below what your favorite NES or Famicom games are, as well as let me know if there are any particular NES or Famicom games that you would love to see get re-released again. For myself, I'd love to see a release of the classic game, The Guardian Legend. That game has loads of shoot-em-up levels, but you could also explore in a style like the classic Legend of Zelda games. It's a pretty cool game, and I'd love to see it come back. Anyway, that's all from me today. Thank you so much for watching and subscribing. I hope you have an amazing day, and I'll catch ya on the next video.